Amy just gave a 45-minute talk in 10 minutes. Did you notice? I'm going to give a 10-minute talk in 45 minutes. I'm embarrassed already. She's good. Isn't she good? She's amazing. And before I talk, I want to just call out some of our advisors here for Project Drawdown, which I'm going to talk about. Andre Hines is in the corner, ready to see the soccer match as soon as I'm done. And he's over there. And he's also a true friend and a great funder of Project Drawdown. Julie Wrigley's here, also through the RCA Foundation, the Ray Sanderson Foundation, of which he's a board member, has supported Drawdown very generously. Amy's on the advisory board. Doug Gayetan, who is a speaker but not here today, is also on our advisory board. So I just want to call out to all of you and say thank you so much. I'm going to read something to you from one of our great American scientists. We don't hear from often, but he's an important person. His name is Matt Damon. And y'all probably, most of you saw the movie The Martian. Remember the end part of the movie where he's like got gray in his hair? And he's going to a class of wannabe astronauts. And this is what he says. He says, pay attention because this could save your life. When I was up there, did I think I was going to die? Yes, absolutely. And that's what you need to know going in, because it's absolutely going to happen to you. This is space. It does not cooperate. At some point, everything is going to go south on you, everything, and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Now, you can either accept that, or you can go to work. That's all it is. You just begin. You do the math. Love that part. You do the math. You solve one problem, and you solve the next one. And the next one. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. And that is global warming in a nutshell. So Drawdown is about doing the math. And it started in 2001 when the third IPCC report came out, system came out in 2001. And you know they're always sequentially more pessimistic. Because it's consensus science. And on that note, I want to ask you a question. How many of you here do not believe in climate change or climate science? Wait, it's Idaho. Come on, wait. But see, the thing is, you all should have raised your hand. That's a trick question created by Karl Rove. The believe is the part, is the trick. None of us believe in it at all. Science is evidentiary. The true believers in this country are those people who believe that the climatic stability of the Holocene period is going to extend indefinitely into the future. And there's not one shred of evidence to support that. So it's actually a figure ground reversal. We don't believe at all. And the other figure ground I'd like to switch on is this idea that somehow we're supposed to decarbonize. We did that. That's what's up there. We decarbonized. We took carbon here and put it up there. That's the problem. So when you think of solving climate change, there's only three things you can do with global warming. That is, use less, right? Less energy. Change the source of the energy, the kind of energy we're using, right? And bring the carbon back home. So Project Drawdown is an effort, a coalition, to try to do the math on what are the 100 most substantive solutions to climate change, global warming. And you say, well, it's been done, right? Or just look it up, or Google it, or ask Princeton, or the IPCC, or it's never been done. I say, it's never been done. So for 40 years of us knowing about this super wicked problem that just absolutely beggars anything humanity has faced on a national or civilizational level, we've never made the list of the most substantive solutions to climate change. I'll let anthropologists figure that one out in hindsight years from now. That's what we're trying to do. And I was telling Orrin Hesterman when he came in, I was saying, when we started out, we kept saying, why hasn't anybody done this? Now that we're in the middle of it up to our eyeballs, we're going, now we know why. It's really hard. It's so complicated. But it's so fascinating. And that's what I want to share with you today. Let's see, is this working, Mike? There we go. So this is how we get the news about global warming, and and this is how most people get the news. And so it's not surprising that they turn off, go numb, don't know what to do, feel disempowered. It's not like what Amy was talking about. They just go, whoa. How London Bridge is going to stand up under that, I don't know, but apparently it will. And they're still, demonizing Al Gore. And then you have these, trivia, how Starbucks is going to deal with coffee shortages. And that's important. And of course, with all these things, you have clickbait on the right or on the top, this is the best one. And this was done by Peter Clark at OSU, Oregon State University. I mean, he's a fantastic scientist, and there was 9 other scientists. And it came out 3 months ago in Washington Post, and said basically it's hard-coded for 10,000 years unless we invent some new technology. Well, what are you going to do with that? If you're a young person, if you're a father, mother, what are you going to do with that kind of information? And when I saw that, all I could say is, obviously he's not a farmer or a gardener, because carbon comes back home, and that's not true. So our goal is to map, measure, and model when we can achieve drawdown, which is that point in time when greenhouse gases actually decline on a year-to-year basis, using existing techniques, behavior technologies. In other words, we don't have to invent anything. There's not something which we need, like direct air capture or bioenergy carbon capture systems, or some unicorn out there that's going to become the savior technology. No, with what we are doing. So we measure what we can do, and we know we can do it because we've been doing it and are doing it. And it's very well documented, both the financial side and on the impact on carbon. And that's what drawdown does. We'll just keep going here. I don't know what that dissolve is. And here's we. So we have about 70, probably nearly 75 fellows. And there's a real blessing in being broke and poor. When we started out, nobody wanted to fund us at all. And so we went and we got fellows from around the world. And 25 countries, about 31 average age, half PhDs, all double degrees, half women, 6 Muslims, 7 Hindus, a diverse group of people who are extraordinary researchers, and they are the core team of Drawdown. And the ethos of Drawdown is not to have a plan to somebody, I've got this idea, this is what we ought to do, should do. It's reflecting back to the world what we are and can do, and it's important that it be created by a broad coalition of people so that it's not personified. It's not his or her idea of what we should do. We've had enough of that. And so these are, and the world's never going to follow somebody's plan anyway, so that's not how the world works. And this is some of our advisors. You can't probably read that, and our staff and our volunteer researchers and some of our fellows. Actually, this is 2 pages now, full pages, I won't. And what we do the math. That's all we do. And we try to do it without bias. And we all have biases. I do. Certainly, about what is the best solution and what's the top solution, what we should focus on, and all that sort of stuff. And I have to say, we're all wrong, our biases. And these are most of the top solutions that we've identified. And again, we identify them by impact, the carbon impact, and then we do the financial analysis. And we'll get back to this list in a minute. And we're going to have a website. The book is published April 3rd, 2017. This is Drawdown Interactive. You can model every solution, every sector, land use, cities, energy, transport, whatever, And you can download the models yourself and into your own NGO or city. We already have cities. They're going to localize drawdown to benchmark, measure their progress, and to track what it is they can and aren't doing. This is just spreads from the book. I don't know why it's so slow. What we try to do when we write, you see that the ground itself is kind black butter. We're talking about solutions here that are really boring, some of them, like, alternative concrete. And how can you get somebody to read about alternative concrete? It's like, turn the page. And so this starts out, the ground itself is kind black butter, according to Seamus Haney in his 1989 poem, Bogland, 69 poem, Bogland. So the writing is really important, that you want to read it. So it's not just a catalog or, a page turner. And so is the imagery. And what you see on the right is Germany, and these are peatland soils. The left side is going to nurseries to sell. You buy peat moss, that's peat moss. And the right side is what it does if you don't destroy it. A third of all terrestrial carbon is in peat soils. A third of all terrestrial carbon is in peatland soils. And that's what we're doing. I can't believe it. And this is Khosan wetland protection. Nothing sequesters carbon at a greater rate than the blue carbon of coastal wetlands, mangroves, etc. It's extraordinary. Last year, the damage done to coastal wetlands was comparable to the total carbon emissions of the country of Japan. And now in Senegal and places like that, you're seeing that reverse. People are starting to restore wetlands. Extraordinarily important. This is carpooling. It shows a jitney, 1914, bad recession, US. Jitney meant a nickel. So people started picking up passengers, and for a nickel. And that's how jitneys started, and they're all over the world. You've been to Manila, they're just all over the place. This is what's interesting. What is surprising us? And the data are tentative. It could change, so I just want to emphasize that. It's not fixed. We won't know, or we won't say, finally, this is where we are until the end of this year, when we turn in a camera-ready copy to the publisher. But the first thing that's surprising us is what the top solutions are. And here they are. And for all of us are going, we just didn't expect this. And I think, all of us for the last 15, 20 years, when it comes to climate change, have assumed solar, wind, EVs are more recent, but EVs, electric vehicles, don't eat meat or so much of it, don't cut trees, and then after that, efficient buildings not lead really, but really net zero buildings. And then it kind of fell off sharply. But somehow there's this idea that if we focused on those solutions, that we would get a hall pass through the 21st century to figure out how we're going to get out of this mess. And nothing could be further from the truth. It's not true. The truth is better. The truth is that we have an enormous repertoire of solutions that will affect climate and the atmosphere. And so many of them are undersung or unknown, or they're being practiced, but they're not being promulgated. They're not being addressed in many ways by policymakers. And so much of what this is about policy. And what we're trying to do is provide the information for policy to emerge that really accelerates the solutions to global warming. And as you see, in the top 10 solutions, I'm not ranking these, but I think if you look at this list, you'll agree with me that if you've gone to Paris or anywhere to somebody who is very literate about climate change, and we thought we were prior to this at Drawdown, and said, make a list of the top 10, 12, 15, whatever solutions, any order, and give it to me, nobody in the world would have gotten it right. Nobody in Paris would have gotten it right. There are solutions here that are in the top 10 that weren't even mentioned in the IPCC third working group, which is the 2,000-page mitigation document. They weren't even mentioned. I don't know why. It's not a criticism of IPCC at all. It's the most significant, extraordinary scientific endeavor in human history. Unbelievable. 2 billion data points in the last report behind that. So it's not, I'm not trying to critique it so much as I'm just in awe of what we don't know about climate change at this point in time, when we know it is basically game over if we don't address it in a rigorous way. And of these 18 here, as you can see, 12 of them are land use and food. Right? Again, we didn't see that coming at all. And another thing that surprises us about land use is how many different kinds of land use. And again, in IPCC, you see ag, forests. What ag, and what forest, and where, and what crop, and what rainfall, and what type of soils, and what kind of cultural practices, and it goes on and on. And so for us to measure it accurately, land use, which is sequestration, which is bringing carbon back home, we had to start be splitters, which is we had to separate out practices so that we could accurately measure them. All our data is based on peer-reviewed scientific papers. We don't generate data. We are literature reviewers. We bring it in, we assemble it, we model it, and that's how we come up with the solutions and so forth. This is our pal, our best friend. Does anybody know what this is? Huh? Yeah, somebody said leaf stoma, stomata, stoma and guardian cells. And what we know about stomata now is that we didn't know much about it. Scientists modeled stomata and tried to figure out, because what happens is they open and close. They open, when they open, they're bringing in CO2, of course, right? And to make sugar, they need it. So that's their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When they're open, they're also giving away oxygen. That's cool for us. They're giving away water, which isn't cool for the plant. So they have to do a very complex calculation to understand when to open, what is the ambient temperature, humidity, what's in the leaves, what's in the stems, what's in the roots, what's in the soil in terms of moisture. And it doesn't matter if it's the dawn chorus, if it's too hot, keep it closed. I mean, and the stomata are doing this complex series of calculations to determine when they open and close. This is the plant world. This is life. Life is the one thing you can't be two with. It's just life. And it's extraordinary. And I feel like what's happened on me, gender specific here, that men scientists said, we have a huge problem, identify it. Great scientists, Jim Hansen, many others and so forth, have done yeoman work. There's many women doing that work as well, but initially it was men. So other men said, wow, we have a really big problem, we need a really big solution. And they focused on basically coal, gas, and oil, which is great. But in the process, it was an occlusion. It was like, blind news, like we didn't look at land. Oh yeah, it's transient carbon, it comes and goes and all that sort of stuff. And our data suggests something far, far different than that. This is in the top 10 solutions. What? I know, it's like, it came out of nowhere for us. Amy has known about it since 2006, called low methane rice production. But we know now, rice is a huge emitter of methane, huge emitter. And we know now that it's not 20x more powerful than CO2, but 72x more powerful, the largest food crop in the world. And it is a huge emitter of methane. You change the agricultural practices very simply in terms of straw and water, and you reduce it by 75%. Costs nothing practically, nothing. And where is that in the world agenda on climate change? Where is that in Paris, So this is some of the things what surprises us? This surprises us. These are basically, I'll go back, but, this tree intercropping, you saw silver pasture, animals and trees and pasture together. This forest you see here was actually deforested. It was bare land, sandy soil. Ernst Gotsch, a Swiss agriculturalist in Brazil, who works with Pedro Diniz, who's on our board, but bought 1,200 acres. This is what it is today. That's what it is on the ground. This is a forest, but it's a complete food forest. It's a multi-strata agroforestry, a technology, a technique, a way of interrelating to land that sequesters up to 40 tons of carbon per hectare per year. And I mean, great grazing will do it a ton. This is 40 tons, up to 40 tons. And this is what it produces. It produces just an extraordinary amount of range of food. It's extraordinarily productive, you know. And this is really growing in Brazil. And these are coming attractions. What are coming attractions? Well, we said we measure model things that we can do. Now, we are doing them, so they have a lot of literature, they have a lot of history. But humankind is extraordinary. And the rate of technological invention now, and technological also means in terms of land use, by the way, is right now asymptotic. It's just taking off in a way that I don't think is properly reflected back to us, because we get the news I showed you at first, this onslaught of news about what's going to happen if we don't act. We've done the math on that so well, but like I said, we haven't done the math on what we can and are doing and the solutions that are at hand. And what's coming attractions for us is 20 solutions that are here, validated scientifically, in most cases economically, not all yet because they're not there to be validated. And so we measure those too. This is Tri-Alpha Energy. It was on the cover story of Time magazine, November last year. It's fusion energy. Fusion is where you put a big hole in the ground, take government money, put lots of it and bury it and never see it again. And so for that reason, they've never taken government money, privately funded, in stealth for 16 years because they are embarrassed about how many times fusion had failed. Just embarrassed. The NIF facility in California is now, it's not going to work. $4 billion of our money, not going to work for fusion, right? So they have done something that nobody's ever done, and fusion is just two things, really. You take plasma, the fourth state of matter, and you suspend it, and then you heat it up, and you get fusion. You get more energy from fusion than you do from fission. That's for sure. They use boron and proton, hydrogen. They did it because it has no neutrons, aneutronic. They worked backwards. When they started this company, they went to utilities and said, what do you need? They started from a user perspective, not a scientific perspective, not like publishing papers, but what do you need to generate power? Safety, security, it's got to be turned off and on easily, a plentiful supply of fuel, and a shopping cart of boron can run a 300 megawatt plant for a year, okay? And, but what they did last year is I said long enough and hot enough, and nobody's ever been able to do long enough, which is suspend that plasma for as long as you want. Just suspend it, because it can't touch anything. It touches things, it disappears. It's the ultimate cat in a sack. I mean, it's just all. And last year, they hit it. They can now hold plasma long enough. And the only last milestone is hot enough. They have to go to 1 billion degrees. You go, oh, it's impossible. The Hadron Collider, which is plasmic, is at 1 trillion degrees. 1 trillion degrees. 1 billion degrees is easy. I believe they will announce fusion at the end of 17. And fusion power will be a reality. Here we go. Graphene batteries, graphene nanopolymer batteries. This is coming out of Spain. Graphene, we've known about it for the last 20 years, since a Nobel Prize was awarded, I think 2006, I forget. But extraordinary material, stronger than steel, more conductive than copper, and almost 2D, one atom thick. It's been the speculation, so many different things. Well, a student at a university in Spain broke the cost curve. No one uses it because it's so expensive. He broke the cost curve. There are now graphene nano batteries that can take a Tesla S from San Francisco to San Diego and back It's a 20 minutes to recharge. It takes 11 seconds to charge your iPhone for a week. These batteries exist. They're being made at Grabbit in Spain. The military, Spanish military, guards the place where the graphene is made. Chinese have already come and made offers. And it has so many other applications. Paint that lasts 300 years, that may not be a good idea for your den, but for outside of buildings, same with roofing material, 2/3 less material for concrete. It goes on and on. It's just the nature of graphene. It's the nature of graphene. It's an extraordinary substance. This is, I'll pass this, but this is really kelp forest. We can plant forests in the ocean just as well as on land. When the early explorers came up the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, they sailed on top of kelp, and in their journals there are these things. This is the eighth wonder of the world. For miles and miles, as far as you could see, we're sailing on kelp, not water where you can see kelp, but kelp itself. And all those kelp beds were destroyed by the Russians, taking all the sea otter population all the way down to Santa Barbara, and the sea urchins came up, which is otter food, and destroyed the kelp beds. They are amazing. This is another one, two guys, father, son, and what they're doing is repopulating the Mammoth Steppe. It's the Arctic Circle beneath the ice and above the taiga, and it was extremely well populated. Maybe, and this is a rendition, diorama of what it was like. And the theory is in the Ice Age, they all died because of cold. The new theory is that they were hunted into extinction. And they're bringing them back into the Pleistocene Park. Why? What does that have to do with climate change? What it has to do with climate change is that when you have animals, ruminants, and herd animals, and wolves as well, and bear, and buffalo, and muskox, etc. These are reindeer. What they do in the winter is they brush the snow away to get at the browse. When they brush the snow away, the ground is 2 degrees centigrade colder, and it protects the permafrost. So these guys in Russia are coming up with the technology to prevent permafrost so we can make this transition. And again, it just gives you a sense of the extraordinary qualities of humanity. And this one, I might just skip through this quickly. Is drawdown possible? And people say to us, well, yeah, that's good for you to say that, but is it really possible? This is NASA. And this is a year in the life of the planet, and you can see by color coding, the darker the red, it's CO2 and concentrations of CO2, and blue is the opposite, it's oxygen, and the white is carbon monoxide. And when you watch this, you see basically both the anthropogenic and the land-based emission and sequestration, in 1 year, and you see the patterns of flow on Earth. And what you see here is it's just getting redder and redder and getting worse and worse, okay? And you can see more and more carbon going into the upper atmosphere. And, but right about June, and you'll see this about June, you start to see it change. Well, obviously the reason you see it change is because it's springtime in the Rockies. It's springtime everywhere, and not just June, but by that time, what's happening is the trees and the grasses are starting to pull carbon back down. And so every year, there's a 5 to 6 ppm drawdown. Okay. The planet knows how to do this. Drawdown is very possible. We do it every year. So this is not some, far-off goal. What we're talking about here is changing the ratio between exhalation and inhalation. That's what Amy's talking about in terms of Idaho and Sun Valley, right? We're talking about changing that ratio, which means stop putting it up there and bring it back home. And that's what land use can do. It's the only technology we have that works right now to bring it back home. It doesn't mean there won't be others. Could be, maybe. Nothing else works now except life itself. And that's what life wants to do, right? And bring it back home. And so, and then you'll see the winter come. I'm just going to And you can imagine what happens when there comes. So what we have now is a Carbon Council, and I want to show you a video from one of our members. A Carbon Council is companies, and those of you who have companies, I invite you to join, who are committed to reversing global warming. And the purpose of drawdown is to map, measure, and model the 100 most substantive solutions, but the other purpose is to name the goal. If we don't name the goal, how can we achieve it? 2 degrees is not a goal. 1.5 degrees is not a goal. 450 ppm, not a goal. I'm sorry, those are measurements. Understandable, but not a goal. The only goal that makes sense for us is to stop and turn around. And a 2-degree goal or 1.5-degree goal is basically saying, we're heading over a cliff, and y'all, we ought to slow down a little bit. But we're still going right over the cliff. I told Amy I wouldn't say this, but it's kind of like Thelma and Louise in slow motion. It really is. It's like, really? That's your goal? And we need a goal that enlarges, empowers who we are as people and our imagination. And what these companies are discovering is that when they use reversal of global warming as a goal, it expands and enlarges their creativity, their competitiveness, their innovation, their design abilities. It opens things up. And this is one of those companies, you know it, most of you, and it's not surprising. It's called Interface. And see in just a second. remarkable about that is that the new CEO coming into Interface last year was very skeptical of the so-called Dream Team, myself, Janine Benyus, John Picard, Bill Browning. Didn't want to really meet with us. They had a goal of 0 emissions by 2020. They needed a new mission because they're 91% there. I think I can say safely, he was a climate denier, didn't buy it at all. And we spent 2 days together with him in Serenbe. And I don't think I've ever seen a Road to Damascus experience in real time. We saw one, and he made this, he chose the music, he wrote the copy. Right? And it happened because we listened to each other. We didn't make him wrong, because we listened, you know. And my wife and I, Jasmine and I, were in LA with serious activists, but they are writers, directors, producers, people who are very vociferous and have a lot of opinion. And I asked them this question. I said, do any of you actually believe that global warming can be reversed? I mean, just, you don't have to answer. But to yourself, how have you been? And I think all of us have this part in it. We enjoy, we see friends, we do things, we're active. This is an extraordinary audience. Any one of you could be here where I am, I would be there, and it'd be a fantastic experience. We know a lot, we're literate, but there's a part of us that carries this thing which is like, I can't really fully express that in my day-to-day because I have work to do, I have people to see, I have to smile, I have to be functional in this world. And the thing about climate and global warming is we have to ask ourselves this really fundamental question, and it's a prepositional question, which is global warming happening to us? You know? Because if it is, then what are we? Victims? Short end of the stick? Burdened? Born wrong time if you're young? Or is it happening for us? For us. If it's happening for us, it means we take 100% responsibility. We did it. Stop demonizing other people, other companies in the past. Stop demonizing other people's confusion. Have any of you been confused? I know I am, and have been, and will be. So confusion is the human condition. So if you take 100% responsibility, you are free then. Free to innovate, change, act, and reimagine the world. And that's the only way we're going to do this, you know. So let me read this again slightly differently. Pay attention, because this could save your life. When I was here, did I think I was going to die? Yes, absolutely. And that's what you need to know going in. That's talking about new generations, right? Because it's going to happen to you. This is the atmosphere. It does not cooperate. At some point, everything's going to go south on you, everything, and you're going to say, this is it. Global warming, this is how it ends. Now you can either accept that or you can go to work. That's all it is. You just begin, you do the math. You solve one problem, and you solve the next one, and the next one, and if you solve enough problems, we get to come home. And that's what Drawdown's about. That's what all of you are doing, I know. And I am so grateful to have had this opportunity, thanks to Amy, to be with you today. Thank you.